And now it's time to take a look at one of the Aussie films that was formerly the most anticipated Aussie film of last year and now became the most anticipated film of this year, because poor old Force of Nature, The Dry 2, has had a little bit of a backstory go on with its production and also being released in the cinemas. Of course, first of all, its production got held up because of COVID, and then being released in the cinemas got pushed back by about 6 or 7 months, I think, because of the strike in America. Of course, this is a film that is a follow-on from The Dry, which is a very, very successful first film in the franchise. It's also based on a worldwide hit novel by Jane Harper as part of her Aaron Falk series of detective novels. So Roadshow wanted to give this film the best possible push that it could get into cinemas, and they really wanted Eric Bana to be able to do interviews for this. So of course it got pushed back because of the actors' strike, because Eric Bana couldn't do interviews at that time. So now we finally get Force of Nature, The Dry 2. Yes, it got a name change as well, all in there somewhere, being released into cinemas. Now this second film sees Aaron Falk, played by, of course, Eric Bana, teaming up with his detective partner, Carmen, played by Jacqueline McKenzie, and they are doing a huge investigation into a company run by Daniel Bailey, played by Richard Roxburgh, and Jill Bailey, played by Deborah Lee Finesse. Now, the federal police believe that this finance company has a list of what they call the Dirty Dozen, 12 high-profile business people / politicians who are using that finance firm for money laundering. Now, Falk finds out that one of the employers at that finance firm, Alice, played by Anna Torv, stole money from the company to try and get her daughter out of trouble at school. So they've put the screws on her, basically, and they're going after her and saying she'll go to jail if she doesn't dob in and provide evidence of what the company is doing. But that all goes haywire when Alice is part of a team, along with Jill and her friend Lauren, played by Robert McLeavy, who go on a wilderness retreat hike. The women get lost, Alice goes missing, and suddenly Aaron and Carmen have to go and help in the search to try and find out what happened, because they believe that the disappearance is just a little bit suspect. Now, Lee, you like me was a big fan of the first Dry film. What did you think of The Dry 2, Force of Nature?
There's a lot I liked about this film. Now, firstly, I don't really think you need to have seen the first movie, The Dry, to see this movie.
No, the only thing they have in common is Aaron Falk, like as a character. Even the style of the films are very, very different.
That's it. So if you haven't seen the first movie and your friends are saying, let's go and see this at the cinema, and you're like, oh, no, I haven't seen the first one, you don't need to have. You can just go and enjoy this movie. I really liked, I guess, the storyline, the intrigue of work colleagues going on it's meant to be a team building retreat. They're meant to work together. They're meant to, I guess, hone some of their behaviours for those that are a bit bossy, and for those that are quieter, they're meant to work together. And of course, you see all the dynamics of people who don't necessarily get along, or they're pushed together in a circumstance where they have to be there, not that they want to be there. You've got also dynamics of people who are friends or have been friends, and there's some complications in their friendship, and so going away, you can see like little bits playing out of those relationships where things aren't working very well. And of course you've got the power plays of people who are the boss or are leaders of different sites maybe of the workplace. And so that's all very interesting. And then you have the mystery of the disappearance of Alice. and everything leading up to that. Now, I have to say, Alice herself is not a likable character. In fact, out of all the characters, she is the most unlikable character.
I think Robert Connolly's done an interesting thing there, though, because Alice is not likable, but Robert Connolly's screenplay has made it that you want her found because you want Aaron to succeed in his case of bringing down Richard Roxburgh's character. Like, it's really multi-layered writing there because he makes Richard Roxburgh's character such an a-hole that you want Aaron to bring him down. So in order for Aaron to bring him down, he needs to find Alice. I think that's actually some pretty smart writing there. I did that better than Anatomy of a Fall for me, I think. Yeah.
I think, too, as humans, we always want an outcome. We don't like things unresolved. So you don't need to like the character of Alice. In fact, the performance of Anna Torv playing Alice is brilliant because she really brings that dynamic of a character where you can see that she's really just not nice to people.
She's a bully.
She's a bully.
Yeah.
And she wants everything her own way. And she just doesn't really seem to have any empathy for anyone else.
And it's actually interesting because you get the feeling that Deborah Lee Finess's character of Jill should be the BITCH, but I felt that in a way Jill's behaviour is understandable because she thinks that Alice is having an affair with her husband. Like, in a lot of ways, I actually kind of felt more sorry for Jill than I did Alice, in a sense.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean about all the dynamics playing out of the relationships, because sometimes there's truth in what the characters are believing of one another and they don't like what they're seeing. In other parts, there's misconceptions or assumptions about characters and you're taking on the journey of, do you believe those things, or are you thinking yourself, oh, actually, I think that would be too obvious. I actually don't think that's happening. So you get that bit of a mind play, and especially as a detective's trying to work out what's happening. Eric Bana certainly does a great job with his performance. He's a strong character. I think there's one thing I thought that didn't need to be in there, and I don't know if you agree, Dave, but he's already got a case to solve. He's already embedded really in the storyline. He wasn't just brought in to solve the case without any pre-story or any, he was brought in, or he made himself become part of the story because he already had a connection to the character of Alice through work. So it wasn't a personal connection per se. He was doing his job, and he knew that the character of Alice was involved in something she shouldn't be, something illegal, and so his character was already connected with her. But they had this whole other storyline of, which I'm sure is in the book. Now, I have not read the book, so I'm sure it would be in the book, but for those who have read the book, I'm sure you can write comments and let us know. They had this whole storyline of his character, so Falk's character, as a child or a teenager, with his family in the same spot or same area that Alice has disappeared in. So it kept doing flashbacks to his teenage or childhood years, but I just didn't actually feel like that story brought much more to the big story. I don't think it was needed. I don't think they needed to show that Falk had a connection with nature in that spot or had a previous experience or trauma or whatever. I don't feel like that was necessarily needed. So that was just something I thought within the story. We didn't need the extra story. I thought that the story itself was strong enough and intriguing enough, and
I think they could have handled that better, like by bringing in a couple of scenarios. Maybe they could have made it that serial killer was still out there, kind of thing. Like they could have made it that guy was still out there, not as they so nicely put out at the start of the film, in prison dying. Like, I think they could have maybe put that heightened thing there. Or they could have made it that Falk's character is still haunted by that and can't function properly in this area. Like, he's got to overcome that. Because in the first film, I think this is the bit that frustrated me about that storyline. It was like in the first film, because if you've watched the first film, The Dry, Falk goes back to a township where he was formerly a suspect in the disappearance of one of his best friends when he was younger. Nobody in the town believes the story of how the girl disappeared. And so I think in that case, that enhanced the case that he was working on, because people in the town hated him and didn't trust him. Whereas in this one, I felt that they didn't really bring it in such a way that it enhanced the current day story. But definitely if they'd done like what they did in like a series that I loved called Inspector Rebus, where Rebus was haunted by stuff from the past, and that sometimes affected the way he dealt with cases in the present, that could have worked. If he was terrified of that area, or kept on going around corners and seeing his mother or something like that, that could have really worked in a sense. So yeah, I get the feeling that they toned that back a little bit because of wanting to keep a low runtime for the film, but in doing so, they've caused it not to enhance the film the way the original writer of the novel, Jane Harper, probably meant it to. So,
and maybe because with the first movie of The Dry, he had a personal connection.
Yeah.
It kind of felt like, why does he have to have a personal connection? Like,
yeah.
In both instances, like, it just seemed a little far-fetched that the first movie, of course, he has a personal connection to his childhood, and then this one was kind of another connection to his childhood.
What did you think of the style of this film? Because I think that's the thing that shocked me the most when I sat down to watch this film. I mean, the first Dry movie had the feeling of some other popular films at that time, Mystery Road, and Beautiful Kate, where it's like the harsh countryside of Australia where it hasn't rained for over a year, so there's heat and humidity, everyone's sweating when they're walking around. This is the stark opposite of that. They're in it's a made up name, but basically they shot this in the Dandenong Ranges in Victoria. They've got fog, it's raining, there's a storm coming, it's cold. It's the stark opposite, and like some people have said, the first film felt very Australian. The second film almost feels Scandinavian, in that Scandinavian crime noir that we get with movies from Scandinavia. Did that jar with you a little bit, that the two styles were so stark?
No, I just thought it's a different story in a different area, and for me, because I visit the Dandenongs and that kind of area so much because of where I live, for me it was, this does feel like Australia. This is our backyard. This is something that could happen. You could easily get lost in an area like that. And I personally have a family member and friends who have gotten lost in nearby areas, and it's taken them a while to find their way out. So for me it felt very much like home. But yeah, when you watch those Scandinavian movies that you've spoken about, it does have that feel as well. But for me, because it's so close to where I live and where I visit, it felt very Australian to me.
Yeah, I thought that worked really well, because sometimes I find if I watch an action film or something that's filmed in Melbourne, I kind of, I don't want to say that it kind of lessens it for me in a bit, because I find myself sitting there going, oh, I walk there like every day or something like that kind of thing. So, but I thought the other thing as well that really worked with this one was Evan Jolly's orchestral soundtrack. It reaches some brilliant heights, and it constantly almost has you on edge as well. So, yeah, I thought that worked really well. And of course, the acting in this, you already mentioned, is absolutely brilliant. I thought Deborah Lee Finesse, Anna Torv, even Richard Roxburgh, I think, is really good in this. He's only really in a few scenes, but just one of his lines that he says to Eric Bana, and I won't say it because it's a bit of a spoiler for what happens, but it was just delivered with such venom that, like, Richard Roxburgh to me is one of those actors that I love. Like, even when he plays the villain, like in Moulin Rouge where he plays the Duke, he's such a memorable character even when he plays a villain and he's not playing the nice guy. But yeah, I just love one of the lines that he says to Eric Bana in this with such venom, and it's like, oh, I hope he gets you. Like, yeah, it's like that. But what are you going to give this one out of 5, Lee?
I'm going to give it 3.5 out of 5. I love the cinematography. I like the storyline. I thought the performances were amazing. You know, I love that it's Australian. I love that it was filmed kind of in our back door kind of thing.
Yeah.
As I said, I just didn't feel the need for the extra storyline, or I don't think that was executed as well. For all the reasons I've already mentioned. So, but I did enjoy it. It is a movie that I'd be happy to go and watch again, actually. So I endorse it. Go and watch it.
Yeah, I'm going to give it 4 out of 5. It's been weird because I've read a couple of reviews where people have said that they didn't fully understand the story and they didn't understand character motivations, but it's like, I didn't have any of that problem at all. In fact, I think that Robert Connolly's screenplay, like I said before, sets up a lot of the characters really, really well, with multi-layers, which you don't always get in modern day cinema. So, yeah, I'm going to give this one 4 out of 5. So, yeah, for people out there, go along and see Force of Nature, The Dry 2. It is a general release, so it should be in most cinemas, but check your local cinema guide. I'm giving it 4 stars, and Lee is giving it 3.5.